This is a typical Japanese sport bike, the country that produces most of the world's quality motorcycles. I often get asked by intrigued bystanders which parts do what. Motorcycles are intriguing pieces of machinery and can look pretty confusing and intimidating if you've never been exposed to them. But hopefully this video can answer a few questions you might have had about them if they've ever tickled your fancy. If you're already a motorcycle expert, see if you can come up with alternative names for every part I list down in the comments below. I'll get you started with a brake rotor instead of a disc. The typical motorcycle is built up from a frame. That frame wraps around an engine which delivers the adrenaline that hooks you on motorcycles. However, the rider doesn't sit on this frame. A subframe extends off the back of the frame, offering a place for the front seat, passenger seat, and passenger foot pegs to live. All the beautiful bodywork that catches your eye are called fairings. Besides their great looks, they also make the bike more aerodynamic, allowing it to slice through the air more efficiently. At the front, you'll find a headlight or two, a windscreen to deflect air over the rider, air intakes to channel air into the engine, and rear view mirrors. The rider gets the coolest view, the cockpit. The main focus, after the ignition cylinder, where the bike can be switched on with a key, is the gauge cluster, consisting of a tachometer, illustrating how fast the engine is revving, a speedometer to enable bragging later on, engine temperature, and usually a few other metrics to keep you as informed about the motorcycle as possible. The handlebars consist of a few pieces to control where the bike goes. Your hands grip the clip-ons, aptly named because they clip onto the forks, which provide some suspension and a connection to the front wheel. The forks are connected to each other in two places, once at the top called the yoke, and once just below the headstock of the frame called the triple tree. A steering stem extends off the triple tree and through the headstock of the frame, connecting the frame and forks together. Grips are placed over the clip-ons to create a nicer surface to grip, and on the end, bar ends are placed for aesthetics, drop protection, and sometimes even extra weight to reduce vibrations in the handlebars. In the cockpit, you'll also find a brake fluid reservoir for the front brake. There are numerous controls at the fingertips of the rider. At their right hand, you have most notably the throttle. It is under the right grip and is twisted backwards to rev the engine. The front brake lever is also there, operating a master cylinder which forces hydraulic pressure down the brake line to the brake caliper, which applies pressure to the brake disc to bring the bike to a halt. Depending on the performance of the bike, there could be a single disc on one side of the wheel or a disc on each side of the wheel. The starter button is also an option on the right. On the left-hand side, there is a clutch lever, either operating the clutch by a cable or in some cases a hydraulic mechanism. The indicator switch is also controlled here, along with the hooter and high beam switch. However, motorcycle headlights can never be fully switched off. They automatically turn on with the engine. Down with the front brake calipers, there is a front wheel and tire, both of which are usually narrower than the rear wheel. Each wheel gets its own axle and mudguard. Other points of contact for the rider include a foot peg and heel guard, collectively known as the rear set. In front of that, on the right-hand side, is a rear brake lever, operated by foot. This works the same as the front, but only has one smaller disc on the back, on the right-hand side of the wheel. The left foot gets all the fun with the gear lever. Bikes usually come standard with 6 gears, much like an average manual car. But instead, they have a sequential gearbox, meaning you have to go through all the gears to get to a specific gear. You can't jump from 4th to 2nd, for example, and neutral is placed between 1st and 2nd and is found with a gentle half click. The fuel tank sits above the frame and engine, with the fuel cap at the top, which can be opened by the ignition key. The rear wheel is connected to the frame with a swing arm. The swing arm is attached directly to the frame and again through a rear shock absorber, providing more suspension. On the left-hand side of the wheel is a rear sprocket with a chain over it, connecting it to the front sprocket, which transfers the power from the engine to the back wheel. The rear axle slides through chain adjusters, which are used to correctly tension the chain. The front sprocket is usually smaller than the rear one, but each can be altered to gearing of your choice and the needs of the bike. Covering the chain is a chain guard to prevent chain wax flying off the chain and sticking to the bike, and stopping items such as clothing from being caught in the chain. Off the left-hand side of the bike flings a kickstand to hold the bike upright when not being ridden, and is flicked up while riding. Out the front of the engine is the exhaust. The immediate exhausts coming out of the engine, usually with interesting shapes, are known as headers, which join into one pipe and connect to a link pipe, which then connects to the silencers. You may have also noticed the rectangular beehive above the headers, and that is the radiator, which cools the engine by having water flowing through it being cooled by the air rushing past. So there are the names of over 60 parts of a motorcycle. Every part can be broken down into more parts, and parts can be added or lost depending on the motorcycle. But this should cover the basics. Hopefully this helps you out if you're just getting into motorcycles and want to learn more about them. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next ride.